Hello and welcome to Fresh Perspectives. My name is Gail. Before I introduce my guest today, I want you to notice the shawl that I'm wearing. And it doesn't really fit in with today's topic, but my sister made it for me. Her name is Judy McLean and she lives in Mifflinburg, Pennsylvania. But she made this for me last fall and I got to thinking about it. I've never worn it on my television program before, so I think I better do that today. So anyway, now I'm going to introduce my guest. It's somebody you met, I think it was back in the winter. And her name is Jen Overfield, and she is an integrative health coach and a nutrition response testing practitioner. So Jen, thank you for coming on again.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back.
Oh, good, good. I'm so glad.
And your shawl matches perfectly also with our window decor here. It's the same color scheme, so I feel like, yeah, we're springy.
Yeah, and you said that this on here matches
we've got the complimentary blues hat.
Yeah. So it's just working out just perfectly. And there is a river running through the parking lot out here. So it's pretty rainy out there this morning.
It is.
So before we really get into talking, because we might forget later if we don't, I want you to remind our viewers how they can get a hold of you if they need your help.
Oh, sure. Oh, thank you. Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah. So anybody who is looking for any nutritional guidance, you can reach us. I operate out of Western New York Whole Body Health. We're located in the Medical Arts Building on 500 Pine Street in Jamestown, right behind the YMCA. You can also check us out on our Facebook page, Western New York Whole Body Health, as well as our YouTube channel. And there's also a private Facebook page. Both of those are entitled Clinical Nutrition with Jen Overfield.
Okay, sounds good. Now, Jen, what you do is different than what the medical profession does.
Yeah.
You work with taking care of the entire person, not just individual body parts. Do you want to talk about this? Say some things about this?
Sure, yeah. I think I mentioned when I came the first time, I kind of gave a little background onto how I got introduced, which was as a patient myself, who had been dealing with some health issues for about 25 years, moving through our standard medical system, trying to kind of figure out what was going on and not having any luck as things were getting worse and worse. I, at the time, had all kinds of digestive issues. I had some hormonal issues happening. I had some bladder issues. There's kind of a variety of things. And I would see specialists for different areas. And even though I had loving and thorough practitioners, we could never quite pinpoint exactly what was going on. And so we were kind of in a state of basically damage control. And after a year or so of some high stress that hit, all of my symptoms magnified during that time. Things went real haywire.
Oh, no. Stress will do that.
It does. It does it, and it does it quickly. So things magnified. Everything got worse, and I ended up in the hospital for a couple weeks with severe pain that ended up being a complete infection in my abdomen.
Oh my gosh.
So when I came out of there, I was there the 2 weeks and we did a surgery, exploratory surgery, flushed out infection, removed my appendix. But when I came out, I felt, although pain had gotten better, everything else was kind of worse than ever and it was hard to eat anything at all.
Oh my gosh.
So I knew at that point I needed some help beyond what we were doing, and especially in regards to food. So medically, the recommendation was to do a second surgery and remove my gallbladder. But at the time, I knew that physically I just couldn't I couldn't.
You couldn't go through
do
with a
it
surgery.
right then, yeah.
Yeah.
So I knew since I couldn't eat food, I knew I definitely had to figure that out.
Yeah.
So I asked if, until I was feeling stronger, if we could look into some nutrition support. And she was real supportive, my surgeon, and so I gave it a try. And at the time when I got started, I was taking 4 different medications for mostly just my stomach. And I got started with our office, which was previously Barkstrom Natural Health. So if anyone's familiar with that, we transitioned into a new name at the beginning of this year. But they have been in town practicing nutrition and acupuncture for the last 10 years. So I had not heard of them though. So I got started, and we just worked on some little baby steps. And sure enough, in a few weeks, I started to feel some relief. And by 3 months, I felt the best I had felt in ages. And by 6 months, I was able to wean off of all of the medication I had been on. One of which during that time was recalled for causing cancer, which I had been on for 25 years.
Well, how many medications were you on?
I was on 4.
4.
Yep,
okay.
There was over-the-counter and then prescription medications. And we weaned off of them carefully and slowly. But between food changes and then complementary supplemental support for my system for the nutrition or nutrients that it wasn't getting at the time, it helped get things back into balance. And I began learning that where in the years prior we were trying to pinpoint these certain areas, there's all kinds of things that can be happening in the body and
at the same time,
and they can be affecting all different organ areas, and it's really not necessarily always about the specific area, but about what imbalance is happening in the body and why, getting down to the root cause. And that's what we do in the office. And I couldn't believe in 6 months how we had turned things around that had been getting worse for 25 years.
Oh yeah, yeah. But imagine the people who don't make all these changes, what their life is going to be like if they believe that, you hear so many people say, I can't live like that. Yeah. I have to, I don't have to, they don't want to take classes and learn how to eat
for
right.
Making changes?
It's just too much trouble. I can't live like that.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing Joel Furman, Dr. Joel Furman. Have you ever heard of him? But he's very much a believer in. He wrote a book called Eat to Live, and he said, about these excuses that people make. I can't live like that, and he goes, for the people who don't want to change over to doing things this way, it's something about, I don't want to have a heart attack and have to have heart bypass surgery. I don't want to have a stroke and not be able to move. I don't want to become diabetic and have to inject myself with insulin every day and do all these blood tests all the time. And he goes, I can't live like that.
Yeah.
That he's putting it in perspective. People might think it's too hard to change their diet and this and that and the other thing.
It's just as hard the other way too.
But it's you have to be willing to be tortured. Basically, you're the ones that are going to be having chemotherapy and radiation treatments and surgeries and all of these different things that you have to put up with.
Yeah, that's the thing
if you don't make these changes. Yeah,
that's the thing. There's a quote that says, "You choose your hard." So it can be difficult to make these changes. We in the office, we partner one-on-one with folks, and we move very slowly through the process to make it as painless and enjoyable as possible. And also so that it's sustainable, so that it's something that is doable in somebody's lifestyle, with their schedule, with their pocketbook, all the things that they need to consider. But it does take time and attention. And And with that quote, I always like it because, you know, you're choosing it one way or the other. You can be choosing it this way now, or you may have to choose with the things that arise from not taking a look at those things, and that can be
and
so
the
much
medical
harder.
procedures might not save you.
Right. My I don't think I mentioned, I never ended up having to have my gallbladder out.
I was wondering about that. I meant to ask you that. Yay!
Yeah, so I was so
Yay.
excited. Yep. It turned everything around. I've never needed to take antibiotics or medications for anything since then. It's been over 5 years now. I never needed to have my gallbladder out. I've been eating foods I could never eat before. I still enjoy treat foods on occasion. That's always one, sometimes what prevents people from getting started is they say I could never not eat fill in the blank, whatever it is that
their favorite
food.
Yeah.
But really, once you get things in balance, and
maybe
things are
once
working,
a week, you know.
Yeah, you learn.
Maybe
you learn your body in a whole new way. And
right.
You learn
right.
what it can have and what it doesn't want, and sometimes that can be, you know, a matter of reducing something to, you know, maybe once a week or once a month, or maybe it's something you do need to stay away from. But just as importantly, it's things that we're adding into the diet that we in our standard food system right now and in our culture, we're missing out on a ton of nutrients that are essential to the body.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to take responsibility for your own health. You know, responsibility.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I thought a lot about my physicians as I was learning, as I went back to school and switched careers and was learning all of this and going through my own experience. I realized that, you know, I was raised, as many of us were, to believe that you know, when something was wrong, you went to the doctor and you told them, and they fixed it, and that was the deal. But I felt bad afterwards, realizing that, you know, I go to the physician's office with a list of symptoms, and then I just hand it to them, you know, and they maybe haven't seen me for 6 months or a year, and I hand it to them and I'm like, I need you to fix these for me. But they, you know, they don't have the window to be able to see what it is that I'm eating, or how it is that I'm, you know, what kind of environment I'm in.
Well, they aren't doctors. People going to medical school are not required to take nutrition.
Yeah.
And so most of them don't.
Yep.
And according to somebody that I met once upon a time, who had been one of these people who was a professor that taught nutrition to future doctors, he said most of them don't take it, and a lot of the ones that do sleep through class. That's what he said. So
unfortunately, it's not a part. They're, you know, experts in so many areas of the field.
You don't necessarily, unless your doctor took nutrition in college when he was going to medical school, you cannot expect them to be able to tell you what a good diet is.
Counsel on,
you know.
Yep.
So
and we've I've really been lucky, fortunate that we have a lot of great physicians in our area who all recognize that also, that nutrition is kind of left out of that area of study and is so essential. And so we actually, in the office, we get a lot of our referrals from local physicians who recognize or who having the experience with their patients that they could value or see benefit by treating it from a nutrition standpoint also. And we work very closely with people's doctors also, as far as, because we don't diagnose or treat. So it's very important to us to work with them as far as what it is that they're trying to do for the patient and what we can do to support it also on our end. But there's so many things. That's what I was mentioning when I had gone through the process myself. I realized there's all of these little things that I'm doing every single day that are affecting my body, that there's no way to know that in our regular appointments, how we have them set up right now. And so the other interesting thing is that our testing system right now is designed to pick up disease.
Right,
So
right.
a lot of the symptoms that I had along the way seemed like they would be thyroid related. And so we did lots of tests on my thyroid, and they always came back normal.
Okay.
And it was always so frustrating when tests would come back inconclusive, because you're having all of these symptoms and you know that something is not running how it's supposed to be. But without something conclusive, you really don't know what to do about it. And even sometimes when it is conclusive, it's unsure. But what I learned is those tests coming back negative were a great sign that that area hadn't progressed into what's labeled the disease. But there's a huge window of time before that, where an area can be under stress, it can be causing those symptoms.
Right.
And it still may need support or help. And so I realized nutrition is this huge window of opportunity that we're missing right now in our healthcare. And I wanted to inject something in here about the thyroid thing. Oh, yeah.
And that is, I have been told by other natural healers that your body, before it shows up on a blood test, if your body's not making enough of the thyroid hormone, that doesn't show up until your thyroid is only functioning at 50% of normal capacity, is what I wanted to throw out there.
And that's the case with a lot of different areas of the body, that symptoms, by the time that symptoms are arising, the dysfunction has been happening for quite some time. Yep, so we start to pay attention to them at that time, but really it's been happening before that. And the accountability, I just wanted to circle back to that real quick, because like I said, I always thought we present our symptoms to the doctor, and then it's their responsibility to fix us. But now I know that that's not the case, that it is just as much within my ability to support my body and my responsibility to support my body than it is putting that on somebody else. Because, like I said, there's all these things that I'm doing, that we're all doing. But I think it's important to know that you have that capacity within yourself, even in just how you're spending your day-to-day, lifestyle, to be able to do things to benefit. So it's kind of a matter of not always feeling like you need to give that power away. You have that power, and your body has that power within itself.
Now, I wanted to bring up the subject of dairy products. And this is really interesting. I mean, for quite a few years before I quit the last of the dairy products that I was eating, I had been off of meat, any kind of meat or anything, for many years. But there was something magical that happened, and where everything changed, when I got that last little bit of animal product out of my life. And it's really funny, because a little over a week ago, I had to go to the funeral home because somebody that was a friend of mine had passed away. And a niece of his that was there just happened to be, I heard her telling some of her other relatives that she had quit eating dairy products. She'd been having, where she said every inch of her body hurt, had gotten to where it hurt. And I didn't quite catch who advised her to do this, but she gave up eating the dairy products. She's in her 40s now, and she goes, I feel better than I ever felt, the best I've ever felt in my life, she's going. She said, I feel better than I did when I was in my 20s. And she was like telling my exact story, So anyways, let's discuss dairy products here for a little bit. Now, actually, the populations, it's my understanding from what I've been told that the populations that have the highest rate of osteoporosis are the ones who actually eat dairy.
Oh.
That's what I've been told. What do you know about it?
I hadn't heard that, but that is interesting. Yeah, so dairy is an issue that is popping up more frequently from what we see. It isn't necessarily that case for everybody, which when we talk about how in the office we are looking at the entire body, we're also looking at just the individual. So regardless of what a diagnosis may be, although we absolutely take that into consideration, regardless of what's necessarily any of the big issues that we're dealing with, we're looking to see how the body is functioning itself, but also how that person is dealing with whatever it is that they have in their system, food, and anything else that might be bothering it. So yeah, dairy has been tricky. There's been lactose itself. We hear a lot about being lactose intolerant. That alone can be causing some disruption. But now we're learning too about casein, the protein that's in dairy,
right,
and how that's having an effect too. And so those two factors can actually drive inflammation in some individuals. And whenever there's inflammation, not only is it making something like osteoporosis or osteoarthritis or any of those conditions worse, inflammation itself is at the root of almost every disease that we see, especially chronic disease across the board. So one of the focuses that we have is looking to see what triggers are inflaming the body. And so for some individuals that can be dairy. Sometimes though, which I think is important to consider for people, or for people to keep in mind, is sometimes it's just the type of, and for dairy it could be the type of dairy. Some people do better with certain cheeses than other cheeses. For instance, aged cheeses have a lower casein percentage. So they can maybe tolerate a little bit more of that. And same with other foods. It can even be the difference in just switching out a brand of something. Sometimes with even with a vegetable, it can be the way that it's prepared.
Oh yeah.
So raw versus cooked.
Right.
Sometimes with eggs, it can be the difference between scrambling or over easy, or it's wild the things that change, and how that affects our body.
Yeah, well, I have heard that technically most of us are lactose intolerant, and that I've heard that after the age of 3, our bodies don't contain the enzymes necessary to digest it. So
yeah, it definitely is one of the big, I would say one of those big areas that we would want to take a look at, especially for anybody too that's working towards any kind of weight loss. We hear a lot of promoting of the keto diet, and a lot of the recipes that we help share with our patients, because we help figure out what they can eat and what they're going to enjoy, because I love food. and as much as I love it, I didn't learn cooking to the, as much as I would like to have learned it for my love of food. So I had to learn all of those things, and that's something that we work with our patients about. But yeah, it's a matter of finding out how their specific system is gonna be able to tolerate something, and sometimes that means removing it. Dairy is a big one, and the other biggest offenders, if you wanted to take a look at home on your own, some things to play around with would be sugars. That would be the biggest
sugar.
one. Yep. And then our grains.
Yeah, sugar is very inflammatory, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, a good chiropractor will tell you that, you're going to have these aches and pains. You're going to have to come over to my office and get adjustments, if you're eating too many cookies and things at Christmas time. And you do see that at a chiropractor's office. They seem busier around the holidays than they do at other times of the year, So, and another thing that somebody told me one time, and this was somebody from the Coalition for Cancer Prevention Through Nutrition, and he told me that that 100% of all the men that get prostate cancer are people who eat meat and dairy products, because it's a hormone dependent cancer.
Oh.
It depends on hormones from animals.
Okay. I haven't heard that, but I have heard across the board sugar. So sugar across the board, because cancer feeds on sugar.
Oh yes, definitely too.
Yep, and
oxygen too. That's why it's so important to exercise, is to keep your body oxygenated, because cancer depends on a deficiency of oxygen to replicate. So
yeah, it's incredible. And I think again, like, it depends on the individual what nutritional needs that they might need, but sugar across the board is going to be beneficial to reduce and eliminate as much as possible.
And there's hidden sugars in
Yes.
so many foods. That's the problem.
Yeah.
People think, well, I'm not eating that much sugar, but
Right, yeah. That's, and again, like, when people are apprehensive about starting any kind of nutrition program or taking a look at their food and wanting to make changes, a lot of people are nervous they're going to have to give up their favorite food, and a lot of times that might be a sweet. And what I always try to reassure people about is, yes, there's obviously a lot of sugar in our treats that we're enjoying on occasion, but the overload of sugar that we have in our body right now has just as much, if not more, to do with the hidden sugars that are being found in our food system right now.
Right.
Yep. So I think I read a statistic that said that right now the average American is consuming 100 and I think it was 54, 100. It was between 150 and 160 pounds of sugar a year.
A year, wow.
So it equated.
That's a lot of sugar, yeah.
Yeah, and I broke it down, and it equated to about 3 1-pound bags of sugar a week.
Oh my
gosh.
So, yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of sugar to eat in a week.
Yeah,
oh my
and
gosh.
I know no one's going to the grocery store and buying 3 1-pound bags of sugar and just making themselves treats all
so
week.
Where are they getting it?
From?
Where are they getting it? Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yep. Yeah, I think. Just to circle back, because I think I got off track when we were talking about the cheese. I was mentioning the keto diet and how a lot of times when people are trying the keto diet at home, cheese is often a go-to because it's a lower carb food. They're trying to keep their carb count low to keep their sugar low.
Yeah.
And cheese is often a go-to. But it's important to know also, for one, how your body tolerates that and in what amount. Because also when it comes to weight, cheese can also be a factor that can benefit from reducing that for some folks too. So again, it's one of those things where we learn all of these different statistics and scenarios, but it really is just based on the individual person, what their body needs.
Oh yeah. I think people with thyroid problems have a lot to do with a lack of iodine in the modern diet too.
Yeah, there's the nutrients alone in the modern diet is shocking right now. We have right now, I think we're in the 3rd richest country in the world here in the U.S., and we rank 37th for healthcare. And our food supply in other countries, there have been thousands of different toxins that are not allowed into the food supply versus the U.S., where we allow.
They are allowed.
So much more.
Yeah.
Yep. So when we were talking about where are we getting these heavy amounts of sugars, I brought some examples of where those are hidden from, but there's also these hidden amounts of toxins, toxic chemicals that are in our food right now that are causing inflammation in our body.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. If you can have your own garden and like that.
It's full of a lot of non-food and not full of many nutrients.
And then you were mentioning the thing about whether or not food is cooked or eaten raw too.
Yeah.
You get so much more energy from raw foods. If you're eating your vegetables raw, if you're eating your peaches just fresh instead of baking them in a pie or making jelly out of them, it just, your energy level just soars.
Yeah,
you know?
there's nothing tastier than like a salad or vegetables right from the garden.
I know.
It's my favorite.
I know.
But whenever we talk about processed foods, and sometimes that term can be confusing for people because what exactly are we considering processed? But basically, the amount of time that things have traveled or been changed from its original form. And so the more it's been changed, the lower and lower the nutrient value is going to be in that food. And so when you mentioned the thyroid and the iodine deficiency, that's across the board too with all kinds of different areas of the body or different diseases. It's a nutrient deficiency because those nutrients right now are really low in our food.
Well, apparently 1 in every 4 women has a thyroid problem issue on account of the lack of iodine.
Thyroid is very, very common in women.
Yeah. Not so much in men, but it does show up.
It does show up in men too.
Yeah. Just not only maybe about a quarter as much, I think. So anyway, I think it's 1 in 12 or something like that, you know.
With raw vegetables, the only thing too that you want to consider is for some of the digestive conditions that might be happening, it might be needed to have them cooked first for the body to be able to absorb and break down as it's healing. So sometimes it is important to have those things cooked to be able to support, but ultimately, everything in its freshest form is going to have the highest nutrient, especially when it's eaten as quickly as possible from when it's being picked, which is why I love the farmers market season that we're coming upon right now, because some of the, even the organic fruits and vegetables that we're getting in the grocery store sometimes travel up to 3 weeks from the time that they're picked to the time that we're getting them. And sometimes they're picked a little bit early so that they can make that trip and still be good. And so that affects their nutrient value too.
Well, maybe we should go through your samples that you brought here today. And you could start with the things that are sitting down at your end there. There's you've got some oatmeal in the back there.
Yes, some hidden oatmeal here. So again, when people are feeling overwhelmed of kind of trying to figure out where to start, or they think they have to make this major overhaul, sometimes it can be just a matter of switching out these brands. So brands that are going to have less of the ingredients that give us trouble, and just stick to the ingredients that we recognize that are natural.
Okay.
So oatmeal, for example, I thought I was eating really healthy back before I got started, before I was looking at my food. And oatmeal, especially instant oatmeal, was something that I thought would be quick and easy to grab on the go. And what I've learned now is, just to give an example, the ingredients here, the very top ingredients, which means it has the most included. The first one is our rolled oats, but our second ingredient is sugar. Our third ingredient, so the third biggest ingredient in this, is a creaming agent, which is full of corn syrups and partially hydrogenated soybean oils, and salt and titanium dioxide. So there, 2 of our 3 main ingredients are detrimental to our health, and they're
well, I know partially hydrogenated oils will clog up your arteries.
Yeah, and they were banned. So our trans fats and those bad oils, many of them were banned in the 90s. Some, I think, even before the 90s. Again in 2012, there were some bans that even New York State made to not allow certain oils into our restaurants. But unfortunately, you still see them creep into these foods, and I'm not sure how.
Even though they're banned.
Here we also have things like our artificial flavors, which can really be anything. There's several. This has probably about 15 or 20 ingredients in it. So
Yeah, the longer the list of ingredients, the worse the food is. Now,
Yes.
are those oat products
yeah,
also?
so an easy swap that we try in the office is swapping out your oatmeal with maybe a grain-free granola.
Or even just swapping out your oatmeal for just oats.
Yeah, well,
That don't have all, I
the
mean,
extras.
The oats, like maybe Bob's Red Mill rolled oats, it only takes 5 minutes to make
Sure.
it anyway. It's not that much longer than.
Yeah.
It's not that much longer.
There's definitely
it doesn't take
instant.
that much longer to cook than the instant stuff.
Yeah.
So
There's definitely a spectrum for all of our foods. So there's going to be, our worst case scenario, and there's going to be our best case scenario. We do the switch to grain-free because we see, similar to sugar, so I talked about how the access that we're getting in our diets with sugar.
hold both of those up so that they can be
sure.
seen in.
I don't know if you're able to zoom in on me.
Oh, yeah, they wouldn't be able to read that.
Oh, okay.
but,
So the ingredients, just to give you an idea, so this is just Wegmans grain-free granola. And the ingredients that we see on here are organic coconut. There is a little bit of organic maple syrup in there, which is the sweetener. Some almonds, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, pecans. So you see a lot of nuts, honeys, and some natural sweeteners versus the list that we see on the back of here, which is a lot of dextroses, a lot of, like I said, the artificial flavors, ingredients that we don't recognize. So we make the switch in the office to grain-free granolas. Because
and what's that one?
this one is Paleanola. So this one's great too. Again, it's a mix of nuts and seeds. This one has a little bit of dried cranberries in them. Sorry about that. I can flip that around for you. So we in the office, we make the change to grain-free granola because I mentioned how sugar, we're getting that 3 1-pound bags of sugar a week. When it comes to grains, which is our wheat, it can be our rice, it can be our oats, our corn. Corn's actually a grain and not a vegetable like we previously have always categorized it as. But in our society, we're also getting a huge amount of grains, more than our body's naturally designed to be able to process. So the statistic on that was we're getting, this average American is getting 134 pounds of wheat or grains a year. So it broke down to, from wheat flour, it broke down to about 2.5 1-pound bags of wheat a week. And so we, as animals, our systems are not designed to be able to handle that much. And so we see a benefit across the board from making some reduction in that. And again, it can be just a matter of switching out a couple things. Wheat is also hidden in a lot of food. It's hidden in hot dogs and ice cream and salad dressings. It's in a lot of places that people don't think to look for it. So just like you said, people think, well, I don't eat that much sugar. Sugar is in a ton of these foods. Like we saw, it's the number 2 ingredient in this one. In the Heinz ketchup, I think it's
if you check out the chocolate candies, I mean, sugar, or any of the candies, sugar's the first on the ingredient list, which means there's more sugar than anything else in it.
Yeah, making the switch from dark chocolates from milk chocolates.
Okay, let's move along to the salsas.
Oh, yes. So these salsas, I actually brought these for a little bit of a different reason, only because I wanted to point out not to be fooled by the label of organic. So just because it says organic, you still want to look at those ingredients. And both of these salsas I just grabbed at Aldi's. This here was just their standard salsa, and the ingredients are our tomato puree, and then our vegetables and spices in here. On this one that's organic, it has all of those things, but in here we also have the cane sugar.
Oh,
that's
okay.
included.
There is sugar
So
in it. Okay.
yeah, so this so when for me, if I'm in the grocery store and if these were my two options, and there are you can get, like I said, a whole spectrum of options, but I would choose this. Even though it's non-organic, I would choose the one without the sugar versus the one with the sugar. So that
Yeah,
I'm not increasing that load.
that's always your best bet.
Yeah.
Okay, and then these are
Yeah.
mayonnaise. Now, my husband has always, we have never had Miracle Whip in our house
Uh-huh.
because, but anyway, he'll eat other mayonnaise. This is not actually considered mayonnaise, I guess. It's considered a salad dressing.
Okay.
And you want to tell us
Yeah.
what the comparison is? What's the differences
yeah.
between the Miracle Whip and the
So this is Primal Kitchen mayo. This is avocado mayo. You can get all kinds of different varieties, but just to give you an idea, Miracle Whip was one of my favorites. I've learned that a lot of my favorites all contained a lot of sugar,
and Miracle Whip has a lot of sugar in it.
It does,
okay.
yep. So Miracle Whip, the number one ingredient is actually water.
Oh, wow.
Followed by soybean oil and high fructose corn syrup.
Are there any eggs in Miracle Whip? I know the things that are referred to as mayonnaise are made with eggs.
Yeah, yep, there are eggs in Miracle Whip. Vinegar was next, and then you go right back into the sugar in the form of the modified cornstarch.
Oh, no.
Natural flavor. And then there's also some things that are added in here as a preservative. So what's interesting is that you've got a lot of really detrimental triggers in this food. Just for a salad dressing, which salad dressing I learned is one of the easiest things that you can make at home. Salad dressings in our stores have like a long paragraph of ingredients that are mostly unrecognizable. When you make them at home, you can do it relatively easy with just a few ingredients and spices. This is Primal Kitchen. This brand you can get in some of our local stores, and you can also get it right from Primal Kitchen online. They specialize in clean dressings and condiments.
Oh, okay.
So you can get a lot of salad dressings from them. You can order in bulk, and you get a little bit of a discount that way too. But you can find them right here locally also. And this one has organic. It's got olive oil. The eggs and egg yolks that are in there are organic, and then we've got vinegar, sea salt, and rosemary. So all things that we recognize. And you can see that's 6 or 7 ingredients versus that list that we have of troublesome
And then
foods.
the last thing in the line is ketchup. This has tomato concentrate from red ripe tomatoes, distilled vinegar, high fructose corn syrup, which is not a good thing.
Right, yeah.
And then regular corn syrup, salt, spice, onion powder, and natural flavoring. Just the high fructose corn syrup alone is to let you know that it's probably not good for you.
Yep, and that it's mostly sugar because it's right there on the top part. There was an image you can find on Facebook or anywhere probably online, but they actually did a photo of how much sugar is actually included in a bottle of ketchup, and I think it was almost half full, if not.
Oh, really? Half of the bottle. Half of what's in the bottle is sugar.
Included, yeah. And I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but it gives you a really good depiction of how much is in there versus this brand.
Yeah, this brand is Primal Kitchen also. Yeah. And it says organic tomato concentrate, organic balsamic vinegar, and then in parentheses, it's organic white wine vinegar, organic grape must. Less than 2% of salt, organic onion powder, organic garlic powder, and organic other spices. So those are the difference. I don't think it said anything about sugar I don't think so, did it?
Yeah, there's no sugar in that at all.
Yeah, okay.
And it tastes, I loved Heinz, so I was used to the sugar amount. And when you start to make changes in your diet, it's funny because sugar dulls your taste buds.
Uh-huh.
And as you start to reduce the amount of sugar in your diet, your taste buds kind of come alive again. And you start to taste flavors in a whole new way, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
But I loved ketchup, and I prefer the Primal Kitchen. Now when I taste other ones, they don't taste like food to me. They taste like you can. There's so much sweetness, you almost miss out on the spices and the vegetable taste to it. So I also have parents who have told me that their kids, they either don't notice a difference or they also prefer the more natural. So a lot of times parents are, they're worried about what their kids are going to eat or not eat. And a lot of these, the flavor is just the same. You still get good enjoyment out of eating all of them. You get to still enjoy your favorite foods with them.
Well,
but you're eliminating that
if
load.
you have tomato plants in your garden, they smell when they get fully ripe, when they're still out on the vine.
Oh,
there
so
is
good.
a fragrance just walking past them in the garden.
I love it. The smell in my hands even after you touch a tomato plant.
And then they'll be so sweet. Tomatoes are actually sweet tasting.
Yeah. Yep.
And it's really nice. It really is nice to have them fresh from the garden. Definitely.
It is.
So
these are just ways that you can look at your cupboards, take a look in the grocery store, and really just check out the ingredients. Try to keep the list to things that you recognize, and the fewer things, typically the better. But it's those amounts of sugars and hidden grains that we're getting into our food supply that are causing havoc on our systems.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. There are some things that I don't even know what they are when you read them on the ingredient list.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
I know.
and you can't even pronounce them a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think it's even more interesting. I know we were talking about the sunscreen we wanted to bring up today.
Oh, yes. We did want to bring that up. Okay, well, let's go on to the sunscreen. Yeah.
Sure, yeah. What I was going to say is it's not just your food supply or your food ingredients to take a look at.
It's your personal care products.
Yep.
And I have run across information over the years. So many people are getting skin cancer. And now I found out that a certain amount of brands, a certain amount of store brands of sunscreen actually can cause you to have skin cancer. It's something about what I heard was they contain nanoparticles of heavy metals.
Yeah, so cancers in general are not, you can have a genetic predisposition for a certain type of cancer.
But that doesn't mean you're going to get it.
Exactly, exactly. And for cancer to exist in the body, it's not a natural disease. It's a disease that's caused by toxins in the body. And heavy metals, metal toxicity is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, toxin to our system. And so our beauty care products, our personal care products, our cleaning products, they have very, very little regulations, especially in the U.S. I think that there's
we're the worst here, aren't we? Yeah.
We're just letting it all in.
Yeah.
And it's true, the accountability that you talked about earlier, unfortunately, that's being put all on ourselves to have to do a lot of investigative work, which was really frustrating for me as I got started on my health journey, because I thought it shouldn't be this hard to have to find real food. And it shouldn't be this hard to have to find products that I can use on my body or in my home that are not going to be toxic to me. But unfortunately, that is something that we have to do right now. And those, again, statistically, I think there was the brand Beauty Counter, which is one of the sunscreens that I would recommend.
There's a brand called Beauty Counter.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. So the brand Beauty Counter, they have some sunscreens that have the cleaner ingredients included.
Okay.
Also, to anybody who's on any area where there's reef, ocean life and reef life, there are actually a lot of sunscreens that are banned in those areas because they kill off that ecosystem also. Not only are they detrimental to us.
So they're not even allowed to use those in
Yep.
some areas.
Yep, so it
Okay.
gets into the water supply and it starts to kill the ecosystem in the water. So Beauty Counter is one of the approved brands, just to throw that out there. There's several others too. But yeah, those products, there's Beauty Counter actually is a big advocate for trying to get more awareness out, and also to kind of push for more restrictions on what are allowed in products right now. And so they have a lot of great information and statistics about what's found in a lot of our beauty products right now. But I think there was I've seen a couple different numbers. Some said 1,100, some I think have gone up now to 1,400 in toxic ingredients, chemicals, and stuff that are not allowed in beauty care products that are sold in other countries, whereas the US only had 11 that were restricted. So when you think about that difference, how many are right now being allowed into our sunscreens, but also into our lotions, things that people don't think about, even like our air fresheners that are in our home, our cleaning products. But when it comes to our skin, it's our biggest organ in our body, our epidermal layer, and it takes only 12 seconds for something that's put on our skin to absorb into our bloodstream.
Wow.
Yep, 12 seconds.
Wow.
So when you think of something like, especially if it's a sunscreen that has dangerous ingredients in it, and think of how many times that we're often reapplying throughout the day or throughout the summer. But really, I think you mentioned earlier when we were chatting how trying to just be able to practice safe sun care just by, having a safe exposure overall. So not needing necessarily to use something, but just making sure that you're being smart.
Right.
But also what's interesting is, and I didn't bring any today, it would be a great segment for us, but there's a lot of natural oils that have natural sunscreen percentages in them. And I think hemp oil was one of them. Sesame seed oil was one. I think carrot seed oil was one. So there are some natural oils that have some sunscreen protection too.
Well, like I was mentioning to you before we started recording the program, at one point in time when I was reading about Edgar Cayce, the psychic, and he said that olive oil has great healing properties. So one time when I got a sunburn, I decided to apply olive oil to the sunburn. I did this twice a day, and in 2 days, after doing this for 2 days, twice a day, morning and evening, the sunburn was gone and my skin didn't peel.
Yeah.
So I think there might be some prevention in the olive oil towards skin cancer too.
And skin care.
Olive
oil is great for keeping the skin hydrated and taut.
Oh yeah.
There's a couple local people here in Chautauqua County, Dandelion and Dreams and Spider's Medicine. Both of those ladies make beautiful personal care products that have a lot of those ingredients, especially olive oil. And that was where I learned that you could just use these natural oils on your skin. They're in, I think, definitely at the Fredonia Farmers Market year round, and then also I think can be found at the Jamestown Farmers Market on occasion too, and some events around
I
town.
seem to remember Deepak Chopra, I think it was, mentioning sesame seed oil, massaging your body with sesame seed oil.
Yep. Coconut oil is great, argan or shea, as far as plant-based stuff goes. But aloe. So we all know that aloe is a soother, but I thought it was interesting. After I had my surgery, my skin was just out of control, and it still is a bit sensitive. It gets triggered easily by things. But it was after my surgery. My skin was pretty broken out, and then I got in the sun, and so now it was a little pink and broken out. And I was trying to use some preventative lotions that were just making it worse. So they might have been helping the tan or the burn, but they were making the skin irritant worse. And so I tried just using a brand of aloe, and I tried that, which was a little bit better, but still not great. And so finally, we had been at the grocery store. We were down south, and in the produce aisle, they just had those giant aloe leaves. And they're like $2, I think, for just this giant leaf. And so we had joked earlier about just getting and using that. Well, finally I got desperate, and I was like, I'm just going to grab one of those leaves. So I grabbed it, and the whole rest of the trip, I just used that. I just broke the plant open little by little, and I just used that on my face and skin. It
cleared it up?
By the end of my vacation, my skin was so much clearer just from, I'm sure, the positive exposure to the sun, but then also the healing of just the aloe leaf alone.
Yeah, and the one registered dietitian that I know mentioned one time that he would rather, as far as internally that is, he would rather see people, because the olive oil is not a whole food.
Oh,
You know, it's something that's pressed from the seeds, I guess.
Yep.
He would rather see people eat the whole olive.
Oh,
yeah, because at least they're eating a whole food that way.
Yeah,
so,
that's great to note, because it's really that's important in everything. So even when it comes to our sugars, we saw there's a whole spectrum of sugars, from our more natural to our least natural. And so when I talk to people about baking, sometimes initial upgrades from cane sugar might be coconut sugar, or it might be honey or maple syrup. Those are more natural forms. Coconut sugar isn't going to affect your blood sugar in the same way as cane sugar, which is great. But even beyond that would be the more natural fruit itself. So being able to cook with things like figs or dates or bananas, coconut milk, although that might be considered a little past its original form, not the coconut. But those things all have their own natural sweetness to them, and you're getting the complete complex, all of the nutrients that are in that food. Yeah.
Well, we're almost out of time, and there's a couple of questions I was going to ask you today, but there's not time because there's just a little over half a minute left. So you are going to have to sign up for another episode.
I know, we never have trouble filling our time together.
So anyways, anyways, I'm going to try to get you signed up for another episode before you leave here today.
That's great.
And thank you again so much for being on.
Thank you so much for having me
today. You're so
welcome.
welcome.
I love being here. And like I said, anyone that's curious, we do different consultations in the office where you can see what's going on for you specifically, but also we offer free workshops every month, both online and in person, where people can come on. We do different topics each month, so whether it's a condition that you're dealing with or if you're just curious, it's a great way to kind of get some more information.
And even if you're just curious, you might come down with a problem in the future anyway.
Yeah, and you'll know what tools to use. Exactly.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, we've come to the end of another episode of Fresh Perspectives, and I'll see those of you in the viewing audience on the next episode.